I know you were listening to some of the things that I've been talking about. And really, I wanted to take this moment, brother, to just show appreciation to our partners, our supporters. These are amazing, amazing members of our team. As you know, of course, you have your amazing team as well, out of whom sometimes you really uncover some scholars who've been doing work. In the same field that you're passionate about, and they end up being some of the amazing researchers that the Lord has blessed your ministry through. So, why don't you tell us, brother, about this year? I mean, what was so amazing about this year when it comes to your work and your ministry from your perspective?
Yeah, 2021. We're moving into 2022. Well, you saw yesterday when we did that live stream, the live stream that we brought in the team that I've been working with. And this is the team that has been really come on by accident. I didn't look for them. We weren't searching for them. Much of what happened was I would just look at the comments. You get comments.
Yeah.
I don't censor my comments. I let people say what they want. They can bellyache, they can troll. But what's great is since we have been moving into this historical research, and that's really have been since the pandemic hit. So we're talking about 2020, the pandemic hit, and suddenly everything started being shut down. Everybody was going home. They were now sitting in their homes. They were watching videos, and they were watching our podcast because of the fact that they now had the time to do so. And exponentially, we started getting an enormous audience. You saw the numbers, I saw the numbers expand, and people were commenting because they had not seen this material. They had not come across a lot of the historical critique that you mentioned earlier. And really, what is the historical critique about? It's about three things: the book, the man, and the place. It's as simple as that. Looking at a book, looking at a man, looking at a place. The book would be, of course, the Quran. The man would be Muhammad, and the place is Mecca. It used to be the book of the man, book of the man, book of the man. I've been saying that for years and years. I think I have it copyrighted in England. That phrase has been bought by my team there as a copyright for me. But I'm now added the third category, and it was that we started doing with you and I started doing back in 2020. I think we even did one or two episodes in 2019 leading up to this. What was happened in 2021 is that we came across coins in 2020, and I came across Odon Lafontaine. Odon was the French character from Paris. Smokes his pipe, sits there. He's been doing this since 2009, where he's been unpacking much of the material from Guillaume D. and Galès. These are the French scholars in this area that you and I have not heard about because we don't get the French material. Mm-hmm. And so we needed to hear about this. And I said, listen, Odon, unpack the French material for us. Now, I had already been working with Mel. Mel used to be on my team in Britain when I was there at Speaker's Corner. He used to come down, was always very quiet, never really said much, but he would always hang in the crowd. He would fly over from Dublin. He would hang in the crowd there, and then we would go out and have something to eat after, so as we always do. And that's where I got to know him, and that's where he would start plugging me. He said, what about this? What about this? Have you heard about this? And I said, this guy is good. This guy knows his material. This guy is serious. So that was way back in 2014, 2015. We're now in 2021, and you have now benefited from him because I've sent him on to you to make sure that you also get this on your channel. Well, Mel was the one that introduced me to Paul from London. Paul from London has been working on what we call the Jerusalem thesis, and he was the one that brought that. And you heard about him, you saw him yesterday, the first time you've ever come across him. And he has come back with a whole nother paradigm of saying, not only is it Petra we need to look at, which Dan Gibson has really introduced, we need to go even further back, close and even earlier to Jerusalem itself, because almost everything that we see in Islam has come out from an antecedent. And much of the antecedents, not all of it, but much of the antecedents can be found in Judaism and Jerusalem more specifically. At the same time that I got to know Mel, he then introduced me to a guy from the Middle East called Murad. And Murad, what a character. Wasn't he delightful yesterday?
Absolutely. And of course, Dr. J is referring to the panel discussion that we had yesterday where we have the likes of Odin, Murad, Paul, we had Thomas, and
I haven't talked about Thomas yet because that's the most explosive, probably the farthest reaching. But Murad, what I liked about him was he was the one that actually helped me, like you have helped me with Arabic, because you guys, this is your mother tongue. You've grown up with it. Murad's grown up with it. He understands the Syriac. He understands, and he has been working on this for years, looking at what really the Arabic says and much of what the Muslims have not been telling us about the Arabic. something as simple as the name Muhammad on the Dome of the Rock, on the coins. They have the caliphal protocols of Abdul Malik. You need to look at the Arabic at that time. You need to know what they're saying. So that was Murad. He was terrific to do that. And I mean, one of his, just a thing that we did on the Dome of the Rock has been one of the most popular videos on my channel. And then we came across the German school. Now, this Thomas fellow that you met for the first time yesterday, he was commenting, as was Odin LaFontaine commenting. These are commentators. And I recognize that these guys who are commenting actually had very good material. It's really well thought through. They had done much more work than I had given credit for, and certainly more work than I had done in this area. So I got a hold of this Thomas. I said, please email me. I'd like to know who you are. You really know your material. He was giving dates, names, places, events. This is the kind of thing you're looking for. You need to need dates, name, dates, place, and events. This is the historical categories. And so we got in contact, and here I found out that this guy represents the Inada School, which is all the German scholars, people like Golzer, or before the Inada was invented, but now people like Gerd Puin, Dr. Oleg, Dr. von Bothmer, people like Dr. Gunther Lulling, Christoph Luxemburg. These are all names that you well know, but no one really has taken their German material and put it into English so we could understand it.
Right.
So I said to Thomas, I already have a guy who's doing this in French, Odin LaFontaine. How about you doing this for us in German? Show us what the Germans are coming up with or have already found, but we in the English-speaking world haven't found yet. And so he came on only about a month ago. I've only had him for about a month, maybe a month and a half. And I have never seen the numbers I'm getting now. We're just exploding. And because the reason why is because the Germans have come across a whole new area of research called the Aramaic antecedents. Not just the Aramaic Quran, as what we're going through right now, but also Aramaic everything. Wait to see what I'm going to introduce in January. I don't want to give any away, because in 2022, we're going to be expanding on this Aramaic antecedents. We're going to show you that much of Islam comes out of the Aramaic world. Now, because of that, these guys and gals, because we're going to also be introducing some gals coming up, but there's another guy that I just want to say, Lloyd de Jong, who comes out of South Africa, who has been really a scholar on Sharia law and also on the Sirah. He's yet to join the team. He'll be coming in January. When you go and look at these people and look at what they're saying, they have come up and they're the researchers, they're the thinkers, they're the ones who are actually unpacking it, but they don't have the vehicles to get this out. You have the vehicle, I have the vehicle. It is your channel that, over 103,000 subscribers. You're approaching almost 10 million now views. I'm just about ready to go, or in fact, I may be even over 60,000 by today. I've got 10.5 million views.
Praise the Lord.
We have a huge platform. You have a huge platform. I've got a huge platform. We can be mouthpiece for these guys because they don't have platforms like that. But yet their material needs to get out for the whole world. The whole world needs to hear this because it's that censorship that's going on academia. We talked about it in one of our episodes, this censorship that is shutting this down so the world can't hear it because the Muslims do not want the world to hear this. They don't want it, and they're putting all kinds of death threats on us. They're putting all kinds of shutting down academically. They're shutting it down. As far as funding, they're shutting it down. They're trying to get us off Twitter. They're trying to get it off YouTube. Look and see of all the strikes that people like David Wood's getting and Hatun Tosh is getting. Strike after strike after strike. They're demonetizing. They've demonetized Dave Wood now. They're trying to do everything they can to shut us from critiquing, especially this, because once you start critiquing it, we don't even have to come to conclusions. We let the hearers come to their own conclusions. But we still need to be there. We need this freedom, which means we also need to be funded, which means we need to keep on the air, which means we who have the big platforms, you have a big platform, I've got a big platform. We are number 5 and 6 worldwide when it comes to Christian platforms that are confronting Islam. There's no one, you, I, and Hatun are the 3 that are doing the historical critique. David Wood is bigger than us. He's not doing the historical critique. We have an obligation to make sure that this gets out so the whole world hears it. That's why people need to make sure they keep funding you. People need to make sure that they keep funding Sirah International because it's Sirah International that is the vehicle where we get this. Where else do I do this but with you? I don't do this with anybody else. I don't have this kind of expertise. I don't have this kind of technology. I just work out of my office in my home. That's it. I have no one else on my team. You have got a much bigger studio. You have got a much better material to work with, but you also need to put out an awful lot more outlay to make sure that we get these, not only these high definition films, but also that they get out in the quality that only you are able to afford. That's why I'm here to help you out. I want to make sure that
Appreciate it,
people
brother.
fund what you're doing, that people undergird what you're doing, that people continue to give money to what you're doing. Because unless they do, we can't get this out to the world at the same level that we have been able to up to this time. So I'm turning to people who are watching you. Make sure that you go to his PayPal, that you go to his Patreon button. You can see where the PayPal button is. You can see where the Patreon, and make sure you support him. We need to make sure that this gets out to the whole world, because it does no good for us to keep it inside, to keep it in our studios, to keep it inside our libraries, and keep it inside our own little group of friends. We don't want what the Germans have done just by keeping it in German. We don't want what just the French have done by keeping it in French. We want to make sure it gets out so the whole world hears it, and especially so the Muslims hear it, because this is the one way that we're going to bring them home. Now, what we did yesterday, I introduced an object. Remember this object? This is called a sifter.
Right.
This is a sifter. Basically, what you and I are doing is we're taking the standard Islamic narrative. That means the traditions, everything that Islam is dependent on, and we're shoving it into this sifter, and we're finding out what comes out at the bottom. So we're here. Let me just give it visually. Let me just show you. We're shoving the Quran into the sifter right here, right? And guess what we're finding? What's coming out the other end?
Well, I guess you told me we're finding biblical material.
It's the
coming out.
Bible that's coming out the other end. This is just visually. I'm just doing this right off the top of my head. When you look at that, when you sift through what the Quran is, when you sift through what this began as, what we're finding out, once you go through the sift, you can find the Bible. And what's left behind? Well, that's all the stuff I want to throw away. I just want to throw away what's left behind. But you and I are sifting it through, and we're not really doing the main material. It's the guys that we saw yesterday. It's the Odons and the Mels and the Pauls and the Lloyds and the Thomases and everybody else. They are the ones that are actually sifting it through, and then we're just communicating what the result is. Our job is to communicate it. Our job is to make sure that the world hears about it. Our job is to, yes, I know the Quran fell to the ground. Maybe that's what's going to happen by the time we're finished. Because we are, in some ways, destroying the Quran. We're destroying Mecca, and we're destroying Muhammad. Now, people say, well, that's a bit strong to make those kind of words. Well, that's exactly what was attempted against Jesus Christ. They tried to do the same thing to Jesus. They tried to do the same thing to our Bible, did they not? They
Right.
tried to do the same thing to the book, The Man and the Place in Christianity, Jerusalem itself, saying he never died on the cross. And this has been going on for 200 years. They tried to destroy our book, Our Man and Our Place. And what they did is actually, they made it stronger, because our book, Our Man and Our Place, are the only ones that have actually stood the test of time. And we're asking the same thing to be done of Islam, book, Islam's Man, and Islam's Place. You and me, what we're to do then is to make sure that that gets communicated. In layman's terminology, taking it from the difficult down to the easy, taking it from the academic material that a lot of people don't understand, and bring it down to layman's terminology, which you and I can then understand, and communicate it so the whole world that can get it, and also so that we can bring them home, because we want to bring Muslims home more than anything else.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that they come home to Jesus Christ. We want to make sure that we take them away from the Quran and bring them back to the Bible, away from Muhammad and bring them back to Jesus, away from Allah and bring them back to Yahweh. That's our job, but we need to make sure we get the support.
Amen. Amen. And thank you so much, of course, for your support, and really it means a lot to me. You, like you said, you have your own platform. You could be doing this somewhere else, but you believe in the mission that we have. You believe in the platform that we have, and this partnership has been proven really to be a successful partnership, because we started this a couple of years ago. And you've been noticing yourself the improvement and enhancement that has taken place, and also the passion that we both share. I mean, you are talking about something that goes to the heart of the faith that I used to believe in, and these are tools that are helping me even strengthen my argument that I am sharing with my Muslim people to come to Jesus. And at the end of the day, that's really the hope that we have. So you want to just tell people about, some of the things that are coming in the hopper next year, without maybe sharing a whole lot of details. Is it still textual criticism? Is it still historical criticism? Are there other isms that you're working on?
Yes, to all three.
Yeah.
Yes, to all three. I don't want to give it away, because what we are about ready to share, what's coming out, is coming out of research that's going on right now. And I have to wait till 2022 to not only be so that I understand it and work through it and also unpack it myself. I have to be able to know what it is before I can communicate it. We have a number of teams that are working on it. What we are now finding is there's a whole lot more about the Quran that we haven't yet that we have yet not told the world. There's an awful lot about who Muhammad was. If there was a Muhammad, as far as I'm concerned, there was no Muhammad. There was no guy named Muhammad. Oh, there are many people called Muhammad. It was a very common name. Umar, in 638, used the word Muhammad. Muawiyah, in 661, used the word Muhammad. We do know also Abdul Malik. He put it right there on the Dome of the Rock. And of course, when you look and see that Muhammad is referring to everything, not Muhammad from the Hijaz. That's Jesus Christ is the Muhammad. So you can see Muhammad is certainly a name that's very popular, but is it the Muhammad of the Hijaz? Absolutely not. There is no Muhammad. And I don't really care. I don't really want to find Muhammad because you're not going to find him. You'd be wasting your time. What I want to more look at is once we have cleared that away, and what we're going to do in 2022, we're going to introduce some real damaging material on Mecca. You know what I'm talking about because we've just filmed it.
That's right.
This stuff is really damaging. And then we're going to start introducing what we're now finding about, not just the Quran, but even the 5 different stages of the Hajj and many of the practices. They do come from somewhere. Hold on. 2022, all will be revealed.
Yeah. Someone is making a comment, just asking a question, I guess. We sometimes tend to focus on the Umayyad period and Abdul Malik. Do you have any plans to explore also the Abbasid period?
I have to be careful because I don't really care diddly squat about the Abbasid period. Why? Because that is nothing more than a narrative that has been imposed on everybody.
So we can say the standard Islamic narrative probably originated at that time?
It was the standard Islamic narrative is the Abbasid narrative.
Right.
There is nothing prior to 749 that's after 749 that really concerns me per se in this argument. When we talk about the historical argument, everything went wrong after 749.
So what you're saying is you want to focus on the gap.
Well, I not only want to focus on the gap, I want to see why it even became what it was. I want to look before 7th century. I want to start with the 2nd century. Go to the 3rd, 4th, 5th. This is where Thomas is going to be coming out. He is actually, we've already recorded it. It's yet to come out. I haven't put it up on Fandor Film. We've already started from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. We're going to look and see how is it that Islam even became. What is it that created Islam as we know today? To understand that, you have to go right back to the time of Jesus Christ and follow the evidence on the ground. Have we not said that all the time? Just follow the evidence on the ground. How many times have I told these numismatists who have these coins, and they're trying to impose all this stuff onto the coins? I said, would you stop imposing and just read what's on the coin? Tell me what the coin is saying. We talked a number of earlier about this Van Putten and Haydn Skidke, I'll get it right. Haydn Skidke, who are trying to impose everything they can on the manuscripts that they're looking at, and they're trying to find that Quran, that archetype of Quran. And I said, we just stop trying to impose and just read the text, what it says.
Let me ask you this. I mean, these are smart scholars, smart writers. I read their articles. And like you said earlier when we were doing one of the shows, I mean, they're not trying to really lie to the audience, but they bought into the standard Islamic narrative. So what do you think making, scholars in general who are still buying into the standard Islamic narrative to at least resist looking at the other data and writing about the other data and discussing the other data?
I think you're asking something that we have to be careful how we answer. I can understand why the Van Puttens have to do what they're doing. I can understand why Haydn Skidke had to do what he does, because look and see where he gets paid. Where does the money come from? Where do his salaries come from? All these guys who are in Germany, look what happened in the 1970s with Gunther Lulling when he dared to ask the unquestionable. And he dared to ask, maybe the Quran has an antecedent to it that is nothing to do with Arabic. It has much more to do with Aramaic. Look what happened to his doctorate. Highest award that you can get for a doctorate. Should have been given a professorship. He was thrown out of the university into obscurity. And for 30 years, he was thrown into obscurity. This is what happens even in Europe. This is in Germany. We're not talking about the Middle East now. We're not talking in places like Pakistan or Indonesia. We're talking about Germany, of all places. In the 1970s, 50 years ago, this was already happening. This is why almost all of those who are my colleagues, and you know what I'm talking about, in our group, of scholars. How many scholars you know who have had to do 2 different doctorates? One doctorate they had to do to get past the tests, and the other one they had to write that came after they got their doctorate. Because that first doctorate would not be published and would not have been given its award. This has happened in Britain. I can give you 3 cases of 3 different doctoral theses that they had to censor what they found so that they could get their doctorate. Once they wrote their doctorate, then they could write whatever they want. But in order to even get past academia, what in the world's going on? Well, you can see this is a censorship that is happening at the academic level that needs to be stopped, because there's no other area of academia where this is happening except in the Islamic world. And you can see why. Look and see what happened to Salman Rushdie. As soon as I say that name, Satanic Verses, when he came out with that book,
Right.
Look and see what happened. For 10 years, he was under house arrest. They wanted $10 million put on his head to have him killed. Look what happened to Taslima Nasreen. She had to leave Bangladesh just because she dared to criticize the Meccan surahs. Look what happened to Fazlur Rahman. He was killed because he tried to say that there's a difference between the Meccan and the Medinan surahs. Muslim after Muslim who has been killed for saying the same things we're saying right now. And this has now infected academia. This has infected the world. This is why there is such a fear to confront the narrative that we're confronting. And this is why what you're doing and what I'm doing is not only unique, it is very dangerous. But for that reason, I want to make sure that we continue doing so, because as Dr. Patricia Corona, when I went to her office before I did my debate in 1995, and I asked her for all these 10 points, and she said, do this, don't do this, why don't you do this? And I said, why aren't you doing this debate? She looked at me and she kind of laughed. She said, you know, Jay, I have a chair that I have to protect. I have an institution that I represent called Cambridge University. I already got death threats at Oxford University when I came out with Hagarism and Meccan Trade and the Rise of Islam, she said. That was in 1987. I had to move to Cambridge University, and she says, I cannot do this because of that chair that I protect. But you, Jay, you can do this debate because you have only one person who you represent, and his name is Jesus Christ. And this was an atheist telling me this. An atheist telling me, I only have one person that I'm responsible to. And this was back in 1995, she told me. That was 27 years ago. Can you see? She understood what most people don't understand. Those of us who are Christians, we have a freedom that no one else has. And this is one reason why I want to say this to the atheists who are watching as well. I've had so many atheists come up to me. I had an atheist come up to me in 2017 when I left Speaker's Corner. The last person, he was crying. He had tears in his eyes. I said, please don't leave. And I said, why not? I have to go back to the States. He said, because you're the first Christian we've met who is actually answering our question. You're answering the question we're asking. Is it true? Just 3 words. Is it true? And he said, this material that you're bringing, this historical material, this is stuff we can use. And I turned to him and says, don't use it. This is not for you. Because you have nothing to replace it with. You have no one that you're going to replace Muhammad with. You have nothing you're going to replace the Quran with. We do. We're the only ones that give them Jesus Christ. We're the only ones that can give them the gospel. We are the only ones that can bring him home. We are the only ones that have salvation. What do the atheists have?
Yep.
Nihilism. That's it.
Yep. Hold your thoughts. We're going to wrap up this part, and then pretty soon we'll come back for the final part, which is part 3 of our live stream. And it will be the part that we're going to have some fun here with everyone else. So if you've been tuning in to this podcast, Let Us Reason, next week you will be listening to part 3. But if you are with us here in studio, please stay here with us for a few more seconds as we wrap this part. This is Al Fadi. Thank you and God bless. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is part 3 of our live stream, and also this is part 3 of our podcast, Let Us Reason. I welcome our listeners of the podcast and our viewers who are with us here live. You've been, of course, listening to myself and Dr. Jay Smith, who is with me here in studio right now. And we've been talking really about some of the projects we've been involved in, reflecting back on 2021. And Dr. Jay Smith also alluded to some of the things that will be coming out soon through his channel. And hopefully, I think everybody figured it out. I want to honor his work. He brings this stuff out through his channel. Then he and I sometimes end up doing a live stream through my channel just as a teaser. And then I bring him over where we can unpack the same material, and we do it here in our studios to give him also the access to higher quality videos, because at the end of the day, really, it's not for me, it's not for him, it's for everybody. and we want to be a blessing to everyone who is involved. So, Dr. J, anything else you want to reflect on regarding 2021 or anything about 2022 before we start, playing some fun games with our viewers here?
No, well, actually, there's so much we could talk about where we're going to be heading. I think what we need to say is we're going to continue to head on Mecca. We have some more material that's coming out. We want to look at the Black Stone. We want to look at the footprint of Abraham. We also want to unpack really Marwa and Safa. We are already going to be talking about the Zamzam well. There's an awful lot yet we have to do. So all of these material coming out of Mecca, we still need to go through. We also then want to go and we want to unpack a lot of the Aramaic antecedents to the Quran. But more than that, I'd like to finally come to some conclusion on how then did Islam really begin? What happened between 622 and 749? That's really 120 years that is still opaque. Odin has been doing a good job of trying to bring us through, walk us through. Joe from Red Judaism has been doing a good job of trying to walk us through. Mel has been amazing what he's coming up with. I love what Murad is coming up with. These guys are doing a great job, but we do want to answer that question. Why was Mecca chosen? Mm-hmm. That we still haven't been able to run down. Why in the world did they choose such an obscure place in the middle of the desert that has no water and no food and no history, no civilization, nothing? So why did they choose Mecca? We're going to run that down, and we're probably going to start introducing that in 2022. Once we start showing what's going on between the 7th and 8th century, once we get that, what we call the missing piece, and once we have finally taken everything and sifted it through here, because to do that, we've got to do a lot of sifting. We are called the sin sifters, S-I-N, Standard Islamic Narrative. We're sifting it through. We need to find what then really happened. That's the... what's the word I'm looking for? That is the missing piece, the missing link. Once we're able to do that, then I think we need to start writing our books. We need to start publishing this. We need to start getting it out into the world. Right now, it's all done on videos, and these are what we call green papers. And green papers are what-if scenarios. Right. This is what Dr. Patricia Corona did and Dr. Michael Cook in 1977 with Hagerism. They said that in the very first page. This is a what-if scenario. From everything we've seen so far, this is where we think we are at. And they had to change it, and they had to move it, and they took the whole idea of the Hagerism. But look at all the footnotes that they left behind. Everything in those footnotes is all historical evidence. No one's going to dispute that, and that's what we want to do. We want to get back to the evidence and come up with our what-ifs. No longer what-ifs. This then is what happened. That's where we want to get to in 2022 and 2023.
It's wonderful. And again, folks, with me here in studio is Dr. J. Smith, and we've been really talking about the many projects we've been involved in, either together or at least the projects that he has been unpacking for the last couple of years. Really, every year there is something new, even if it is the same topic, like, for instance, whether it's the Qibla, whether it's Mecca, whether it's Muhammad. Anytime, that's what I love about Dr. Smith and his team. Anytime there is new information out there, he's not holding it back from you. He is not writing an article that you can wait a year and a half to publish, and by the time it's published, there is so many other discoveries. No, we are bringing it out to you immediately, whether through my channel, live stream, through his live stream, or through his channel. The idea is we want you to benefit from it immediately, especially, I'm speaking to you, my Muslim friends. We're doing this out in the public. Many times you see us here in the studio or in his own live stream or in his own channel with stacks of books. Why? Because he wants you to know which book talk about what, who's the author, and you can go and buy it. And, I remember one time we were talking about the different, variant readings of the Quran, and we gave you even the website, and I think they ran out of products or inventory, that week, because we've encouraged people to go and do so. For now, I'm going to spend the remaining about 20 minutes or so as really an appeal to both of our channels. First of all, I encourage all of you to consider supporting Dr. J. Smith and his effort, supporting him through Patreon, supporting him through PayPal, subscribing to his channel, spreading the wealth of knowledge out there by sharing his videos, even reaching out to him if you have any data about things that he talked about, any articles, any sources that you feel like he should really look at. For instance, he has a team that can, sift through it, no pun intended here, to let him know if there is any material or data in there that worth doing maybe some further exploration and finally doing maybe even a show or a series of videos on that. But at the same time, we want you to know that things like this don't happen out of nowhere. I mean, there is always a cost associated with things like this, and you blessing him and blessing his ministry can go a long way. By the way, Dr. J. Smith, just because when we're talking to you about money, we're not talking about a millionaire. People tend to think like somehow when we're discussing about supporting a person or supporting a ministry or supporting a channel, somehow you're making that person wealthy. Not at all. The costs are going up. There is so much involved in research and in publications and in doing videos and in improvements and so on and so forth. So all you're doing is like you're helping him to at least, be focused on that mission and not be distracted on trying to find other sources and other means to support himself and his family. So you're doing it for a good cause, and especially through Patreon. My goodness, the levels of Patreon, you can do $1, you can do $5, you can do $10. You do the math. I mean, if you think people get millionaires by, giving them $1 or 5 or 10, I mean, maybe we're living in a different world. The idea here is to maintain stability in the income because in Patreon alone, that's been my experience. I don't know, Dr. Smith, if you have the same experience. Patrons, the number of patrons fluctuate for many reasons. It could be a credit card that expired, banking information that changed, or the people just felt like I've done my part, for the last 6 months or a year or two, and now I want to do some other things. So.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we did that we need right. You and I are what we call faith missionaries. We don't have a solid salary. We are dependent on people supporting us. We are dependent on tithing of people who are in our churches. I have been doing this for almost 40 years now. My wife and I, we have been working in the Islamic world since the 1981, 1982 when we got started. So we're coming on to 40 years now where we've been working as faith missionaries. And faith missionaries need to be supported. We need to make sure, otherwise we can't do what we're doing. We can't even live where we're living. We can't even wear the clothes on our back unless we get supported by people in the church. Now, in saying that, I don't want to be supported by non-Christians. I'm very careful that only Christians support me. And I've said this before over and over again. Please, if you're a Christian, do support. If you're a Muslim or an atheist, please don't. I don't personally need your support. I don't want it because it has to come from God. It has to be something that's laid on the hearts of people because God has laid it on their hearts. That's what we're talking about, the tithing, the 10% that is given to the church. And don't take away money that you should be going to your church to give to me. Just give that money that's above and beyond what you already give to your church. We've worked on that principle for 40 years, and we've been able to survive on that principle. We don't even own a house, Judy and I. We don't have enough money to own a house. We do own a car, and we do own my laptop. So at least I can say some things belong to me and the shirts that we wear. But because of the fact that we are faith missionaries, in some ways, it makes us a lot closer to the people who support us because we know exactly why is it they support us. And it's not because they're trying to get credit. It's because they believe in our ministry. They believe in what we're doing. They believe on where we're going. And they also want to bring people home. They want to bring Muslims home. My area of research has always been in Islam. We are now actually, we've got the degree program. You're part of it with Veritas International University, where we're now training many others up to take it out
Amen.
and to get it out into the world. And we have a master's degree and a doctoral degree program that does just that. But what's fascinating, I think, as far as support, for a lot of Muslims, they come up to me and they say, you're making $1 million off this stuff. And I say, I'd love to know where that million is. I would love to know where is it you came up with that kind of figure. Because those of us who are in faith missionaries, and anybody knows anything about missionaries, we tend to be the poorest of the poor. We do not make an awful lot of money. And what money we do make goes into our ministry. It goes back into plowing it back into the cameras, and it goes back into, well, in my case, the cameras and the laptops and everything else that I need, and also the trips, because I do an awful lot of trips around the world. And many of those trips, especially if it's to Africa or if it's to a third world, I pay for it myself. I don't ask them to pay for it. I do all my airfare, and I also do my hotels and my food and all the rest because they don't have those kind of finances in those countries. Other places like Europe, then they pay for it, or around the United States, they pay for it. But because of the fact that we're faith missionaries, my parents were faith missionaries, my grandparents, I'm a third generation faith missionary. All my aunts and uncles. I have 6 aunts and uncles. They were all faith missionaries. So in some ways, it's something that I've grown up with. It's just something that's expected, that we don't do it for the money. We're not in it for the finances. We've never been in for it finances. We don't. As I said, I'm almost approaching 70, and I still have been able to even afford a house for my wife. It's similar to what we see in the early church. The early church did much the same thing. And that's why it's not in for the money. And I've heard many Muslims used to come to Speaker's Corner, you must be given $1 million. I said, well, maybe your Muslim diets to get $1 million, but we don't get that kind of money. We don't see that. And we wouldn't want to, because that is not where we would spend it. We would not spend it on ourselves. We would just plow it right back into the ministry.
Amen.
But we do need to make sure that we do get funded so that we can eat and so that we can travel, so that we can minister, so that we can continue to do this amazing research. Every one of those people that you saw that I introduced yesterday, not one of them gets paid a cent. I've not paid a
That's
cent
true. That's
to
true.
Odon. I've not paid a cent to Thomas. I've not paid a cent to Mel. They do everything completely gratuitous. They do the research. They put the PowerPoints together. They come on our channels. We don't pay them a cent. I think this is something that's unique for Muslims to hear. They're not used to hearing this. I've never Muslims balked and they said, you're just lying. You're making this up. And maybe that's the way it works in the Muslim world. But in the Christian world, we do everything gratuitously because it comes from God himself. And whatever money God then supplies us with, we take and we just live off of that. We've always lived off the bare minimum so that we can get by. And I think because of the fact that in your case, you're new to the Christian world because you're the first generation. In my case, this is something that I've all grown up with. All my aunts and uncles, my grandparents on both sides, my parents, my wife, she comes from a missionary. Her whole life, she used to tell me that there were times when she had 4 brothers, and they were times they were about ready to go on a vacation, and suddenly there was no money came through. They had to cancel the vacation. This is something those are the kind of stories we've grown up with all our lives. It's not something we do for the money. There is not money in mission work. We don't do it for the money. We do it for the love of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And we do it for the love of bringing people home to him and nothing more.
Amen. And I want to, like you heard our brother says, it's not about the money, but, so support is always helpful. With that in mind, I want to really issue this Love in Channel challenge to your viewers who are watching us right now and my viewers. Would you consider, at least if you haven't been supporting him or myself on Patreon, would you consider the challenge of having 25 Patreon supporters on his channel, Founder Films, by the end of the year, and also 25 on my channel, Sierra International? Remember, Patreon and patrons are very, very difficult because the numbers fluctuate. In fact, I lost more than I gained this year. That's, again, God always provides. We're not here to sit down and mourn, numbers. It's always helpful. So my challenge to you, consider to become a patron for my brother. Consider to become a patron for me. We're looking for 25 people on both of these channels. Also, the Lord puts in your heart to give through PayPal. That's fine. Some people love to do that. In fact, I'm going to give you right now a kind of a fun part for giveaways. So I'm going to ask my own viewers on my channel if you can list to me the names of the people that Jay just mentioned. The researchers, the ones that have been supporting him. In the next 1 minute, if you can list all these names, I think there are 5 of them, you will receive one of the giveaway books. And make sure you go to my channel, you go to my, website, SierraInternational.com. Email me your address. I cannot really send you the giveaway if I don't have your name and your address, Like I said, out of the people that we had last time, only 3 reached out to me and gave me an address. I won't be able to reach out to the others. I tried, but unfortunately, unless you come to me and you give me that information, I won't be able to find you. So you have 1 minute from now to go ahead and do so. Any of you who will be willing to give, even to my brother or me, a one-time, maybe 250 through PayPal right now, let us know. I'll be more than happy to give away a book, whether you gave it to my brother through his channel or mine. We want to help support his efforts just like we are prayerfully asking for the support of our efforts. So, can you think of any giveaways, for instance, that you want to give to people, or questions you want to ask them? Let's have fun with them.
Well, I would suggest that I think one of the things that we would like people to see, and I think that one of the things we've asked people to do in the past, is if they have queries that they really feel are queries that are coming up from the academic world, we would like to see them. We're not seeing that so far. What's fascinating to me, and you asked me this yesterday, what kind of pushback are you getting from the Muslims on this new material? For the last 2 years, I'm not getting much pushback at all from Muslims. What I'm doing is I'm getting a lot of ad hominem from the Muslims.
Mhm.
We don't. The ad hominem is not what we want to see. We want to see actual critically and analyze substance to their queries. We want to see why is it that if something like what happened with Christoph Luxemburg when he came out with his material in 2000, we're now in 2021. Why is it 21 years later, why in 21 years have they not come up with a bona fide critique of his 7 steps, the 7 steps that I introduced about a month ago? Why has that not come out yet? Where has anybody gone through and looked at what he did to the codicogical material, with the lexicons, with looking at the harakat and the ijabs? Why is it no one's really dealt with that? Why is it they haven't gone back to the Aramaic, the lexicons that are there? None of this has been done yet. And so until that is happening, we're going to continue just keep working on it. But we're looking and asking, maybe someone who is watching here has been able to come up across some academic work, has been able to come across some academic response, critical response, that can actually ask the questions that we need, because that's how we get peer reviewed. We know, I remember when Dan Brubaker put his book out in 2019, it took us 6 months before Haydn Siski even came up with an article.
You want to show his book? You have it right here. Let people see it. We encourage people to go and get it. It's a very simplified book, just a fraction of his research on basically on his dissertation PhD. This small book, how many pages?
It's only about 100 pages.
100 pages.
So it's 110 pages.
You know how many pages were written now to refute it? Probably approaching 1,000.
Certainly, you have Altekulic. Altekulic, he did his Tayyar Altekulic wrote just a year and a half ago. He did over 110 pages to try to refute it, and that he printed and published in his Irsisa, his own organization. Yeah. What's fascinating, Haydn Siski, I think it was a third, about 30 pages long, his criticism of this. When Dan Brubaker came up with a response to that criticism, went back to that journal, that same journal that published his criticism, they wouldn't take it. They said there's no need to do it. We don't do responses. To me, I've never heard of that. Every time you're going to put a critical analysis of someone's research, you always allow a response.
Of course. I mean, it's a public arena, basically.
Now, that took 2 years for just that exchange to go back. When we put up material, how long does it take before we start getting criticism? Within seconds.
That's right.
Within seconds. We get peer reviewed immediately.
And I'm glad you bring this up, because you folks can see the importance of what we do, because we bring things immediately to the forefront. Immediately. We're not going to wait for someone to tell us yes or no to publish a refutation. No, we bring it immediately, and we force others to respond to it immediately as well. And again, what's there to refute? These are images.
Well, again, this is just 20 images of 4,000 that he has.
That's right.
He has an enormous more to do. Now, the publishing house that he uses is Think and Tell. And we're going to be doing all our work through Think and Tell. We're going to actually start publishing book after book in Think and Tell. This is the first time many have heard of this. You've never heard of Think and Tell before. Yeah. It's going to be a powerhouse publishing organization that's putting out all this new historical material. Dr. Daniel Janasic is now going to start using Think and Tell. We know Dan Brubaker is going to continue using Think and Tell. I'm going to start publishing my books through Think and Tell. And you're going to see Mel wants to start books. So does Odin. So does Thomas. They all want to start writing books, and it's all going to be coming under Think and Tell.
Wonderful. Let me say this. Al Mer, bro, you're awesome. Mel, Odin, Murad, Thomas. He mentioned Lloyd, actually. And
Lloyd Jejung. That's yet to come. That's number 6.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So, Al, reach out to me. I think I have your email, but just go ahead and reach out to me, and you'll be receiving one of these books, Dr. Brubaker's book, autographed, I think, by him. That's what he told me. And I'll autograph it for you as well. So that's wonderful. Gosh, we have a few minutes left. I'm going to wrap up this section, of course. We're going to stay on the air for a few more minutes after that, just in case if anyone have any questions. But one should let people know what we've been working on.
Just these last few days?
Yeah.
Okay. We have gone through and we have been unpacking a lot more material on the Meccan, the difficulty with Mecca.
Right.
Remember that series we did? We did about, I think it was 17 different videos on Mecca. Well, since that came up, even more exciting material. We went and we unpacked the isolation of Mecca. We showed that we now have found we've now found the topographical images of showing exactly where the Western Plateau is. We didn't have this. Patricia Kuno didn't have this when she came out with her theories in 1987. This kind of technology didn't exist. The technology now exists today. So we unpack that and show you, when you look at it from a topographical map, scale map, look and see where all of the trade routes are. Look and see where they're all on oases. And notice that Mecca is nowhere near any of them. Mecca is completely off this plateau. And that's what we're going to show. We're going to also show the civilizations, all the civilizations from all that area of the world. We're going to ask if any of them have heard of this place called Mecca. And we're going to go all the way back to the Assyrians. We're going to go to the Himyarites. We're going to go to the Babylonian civilization. We're going to go to the Roman civilization. We're going to go to Western Arabia, where Mecca actually exists. We're going to ask the people that were actually there, where Mecca exists, if they knew about this place. Not one civilization has ever heard about it. So we're going to show that, and we're going to show it visually. These are all going to be on maps, and they're going to be visual. And then we're going to go and ask the question about water. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as water, the nectar of life, absolutely essential for everything. We cannot exist without water. We cannot, all our food is based on having water. We have to have water to have food. And until you have water and food, you're not going to have people. If you don't have water and food and people, then of course, you don't have any towns. If you don't have any towns, you don't have any cities. You don't have any cities, you don't have any civilization. You don't have any civilization, you do not have any history. Something as simple as that, it only takes 10 seconds to make. We're going to then ask that question, and then we're going to go and shut down the response that every Muslim has been responding whenever we bring that up, and that is, what about the Zamzam well? Mm-hmm. Wait till you see what we now found about the Zamzam well. You were uncomfortable, weren't you, when we actually were filming that? You did not like what I came up with, because this is your heritage. This is your territory.
I mean, the idea is that, I knew about the salinization plans, but I wanted to be careful not to also promote something that I wasn't fully aware of. That's pretty much my reaction. But you laid out a good case, for it.
Wait till you see, and I'm just going to put this as a caveat, wait till you see where this nectar of heaven comes from. Every Muslim will tell you it comes from God. This is a miracle of the Zamzam well, that it actually has enough water there that is exhaustive. It is exhaustive, so the whole Muslim world can get little bottles of it, and all of their. You can look at every one of the bookstores, anywhere you go and see an Islamic store, there's a Zamzam well bottle. You can buy millions of them, all from this one little well called the Zamzam well. We're going to show you where that comes from. But I'm going to hold on there. I don't want to give the answer. Don't you give the answer yet.
No, we won't.
This is going to be fun. Now, and then we also then went and unpacked the...
Yeah, we have 1 minute left.
Aramaic, the whole Aramaic categories. And we started and we unpacked the German school. So that was the other category that we went into, and I'll shut up now.
No problem. I think you're holding on to the Aramaic, idea, because you have a lot of work on that. And I know it's worth really letting people anticipate.
I'm not going to give it on this show. I'm not going to give it out now, because it is yet to come. And I haven't even introduced it on my show yet. And once you get it on Phantom Films, then you get it here. The tendency is I usually do the newest material with you, and then I get it after you get it. So I always get it secondhand with everybody on my show. But this time, this is going to be coming on my show first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, brother. Thank you, everyone, at least those of you who have been tuning in to this podcast, Let Us Reason. This was part 3 of the podcast. Now, if you are with us live, please stay on for a few more minutes. We want to interact with you, see if you have any more questions for us, and we'll continue this dialogue as well. So, and, I want to thank those of you who have been joining us. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening to this on our podcast. Make sure you share this with others as well. And those of you who are watching us live, please stick around for a few more minutes. Okay. Well, brother, you were talking about, what we did. And next year, Lord willing, we want to have you back as always, in addition to the in-between live streams. And my hope is that you would have probably unpacked more material. Now, without sharing any details, at least, are you focused on any specific areas? Like, are you going after, I know that the Quran right now, Mecca, are you still going also after the man? I mean, is there more work concerning Muhammad himself?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember, as I said, we want to find out what really happened between 622 and 749.
Mhm.
So that 120-year period, we want to unpack and solve the missing link. But I pretty well know where we're going to go. I pretty well know what we're going to find. And it's not going to be pretty for Muslims.
Yeah, sadly. Now, have you had any interactions? You and I interviewed Robert Spencer when he republished his book. But in light of all of these findings, I mean, have you had any interactions with him? And is he planning on doing any other updates?
Yeah. Well, this is one of the difficulties that we're dealing with. Once you start publishing, when you publish, you're already out of date. When he did this interview with me in July of 2020, I had him on for the first time, and I started introducing a lot of the new material that we had come across with the coins, and he had heard something about it, but he had never come to any conclusions on it. And I said, well, have you also looked at Dan Gibson's? He didn't really know about Dan Gibson at that time. I said, have you come across any of the material on the rock inscriptions of Ilkest, all Ilkest's study? He hadn't heard about that. I said, well, you need to get on board. And he said, well, I kind of let it go after 2012. This is 8 years later. He hadn't really gone beyond that. And then I said, well, what are you going to do? So he went back and talked to his publisher, and this publisher said, well, go ahead, do another version. So he went and he started putting it together and started reading up on all our stuff and coming up on our line, coming up on Fandom Films, pulling it all together, and he finally came out with his version in I think it was November of 2020, and sent it to me. So, Jay, could you read this? Tell me what you think. And so I got on the phone within about an hour, and I said, Robert, you're still way behind. You haven't even come to any conclusions on the coins. You haven't even followed through what we're now finding, with the rock inscriptions. I said, this is all stuff that's happened since July. He said, well, I've already sent it to the publisher. I said, that's the problem with publishing. It's moving so fast. It's changing so quickly that even between July and November, he was already out of date. And he said, well, at least could you put it forward? So I read, if you look on the edition that just came, his edition, which just came out July this year, he put it in in November. They would not get it. They could not get it published until July because there was such a waiting list of other books before that.
Right.
Not his, others. That this was another 7 months later. So it was already almost a year out of date. Yet it's still there, and it's making huge grounds. And I said, the problem for you, Robert Spencer, is you're going to have to write a book every year. But see, with Think and Tell, we control the publishing. The Think and Tell people are the ones who control it. And so the Think and Tell people says we can publish every year and just keep upgrading. And what we'll do is Dan Brubaker will write this book, and then he'll put, if this is written in 2019, he'll put 2022, 2023, just keep on upgrading and enlarging upon. And of course, in his case, he has so many more others, he doesn't even need to go back to those 20. He'll go to another 20, and another 20, another 20, another 20. He has 4,000 he needs to go through. So what's happening as far as Robert Spencer is, we're going to keep bringing him back to every year. We'll probably re-engage with him and say, now let's see what you found since the last July. So every July, I'm going to bring him on just to keep up and get us updated with what he's found each year. And make sure he does keep publishing. But if he's not going to publish it, we'll publish it for him.
Yes. And I want to see if any of your viewers or mine have any specific questions. Folks, we'll be around for a couple of more minutes. That's it. And then because we're going to have to really leave and continue recording, we still have a few more shows or episodes to record in a specific series that we're working on right now. So if anyone have any questions for us, let me see. What are all these Islamic professors at universities everywhere doing, and why can't they do this kind of research? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, it's very simple. What they're doing is they're really just explaining and explaining to people what the standard Islamic narratives. What they're doing is they're just introducing this. They're introducing everything that goes in it, but that doesn't have any holes here. They're keeping it in a bowl that has no holes. When you need to pass it through the sieve, and none of your professors are willing to do that for one very good reason. If they do that, they will lose their chair in the universities. Secondly, they'll lose all their funding because the universities, most of the European universities now for the Middle Eastern studies are all supported by petrodollars. dollars coming in from Bahrain and United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. The Middle Eastern oil money is what keeps and props up those chairs. Secondly, in order for them to do their research, in order for them to get into those countries, they need to make sure that they don't say anything that's critical of those countries, because they're not going to not be able to visit the museums or to get into the libraries or to even get into the sites for the archaeological sites if they say anything that goes against the narrative that's right here. And so they're in a rock and a hard place. I've seen this firsthand with my own ministry. When I did a debate back in 1987, it was the debate. It was an in-house debate with Christian academics, where they were asking whether or not I should even use historical criticism in Islam. I couldn't believe that question had to be debated. And I said yes, and all the academics who were there, Dr. David Marshall was the one that was debating me. Dr. David Marshall was saying no. He was from Oxford University, got his doctorate on the Quran from Oxford University. He's saying, no, you cannot use historical criticism against the Quran. Now, to me, that just seemed absolutely idiotic. What do you mean? You can use it against any other book, but not the Quran. You can use it against any other man, but not Muhammad.
What was his reasoning?
Well, because it will come back and flip back and hurt us, because we don't believe in source criticism for the Bible. Or I said, since when don't we believe in source criticism? Since when don't we believe in redacted criticism? Where do you think these were matured? How do you think we know about source criticism? And how is it we are told about redacted criticism and textual criticism? Textual criticism was matured on the Bible. Now, in that group were about 50 men and women. They were all academics, all of them either doing their doctorate or they were teaching in university. They were teaching on staff. At the end of that debate of 2 hours, I was asked two questions. Should we use historical criticism and should we use polemics? Do not attack the Quran. Do not attack Muhammad. This is hands off. You're in Britain. You're in America. What are you doing here doing this at Speaker's Corner every Sunday? And I said, how are we going to get it to the world? How can you say that you can attack the Bible, you can attack the Book of Mormon, you can attack the Vedas, you can attack the Bhagavad Gita, but you can't attack the Quran? Since when is this double standard? There's only one book you cannot confront and everything else is open season. And I couldn't believe I was hearing what I was hearing. So after 2 hours of debate, they had a show of hands as to who supported me and who supported Dr. David Marshall. 25 of the academics went with David Marshall, 25 went with me. Now, I'm going to let you guess as to who went with me and who went with David Marshall. Did the academics go with him or did they go with me? Did the missionaries who are all doing degrees go with David or did they go with me? Who do you think went with him?
It's clear cut. Missionaries with you, they're practical. Academics with the academic field.
Absolutely. And Dr. Peter Riddell, this is where I met him. He was at this debate there at Selly Oaks College in Birmingham University, 1987. He rode back to London with me and we were in the car and this is the first time I met him. And he turned to me and says, Jay, I had to raise my hand for David Marshall. I said, what in the world? You actually believe what he said? He said, Jay, you don't understand. I'm an academic. I'm on staff with other Muslims. On our staff are other Muslims. I cannot say what you can say here in my own academic offices. I cannot, in order for me to get along with them, in order for me to continue to protect my chair. Now, this is in 1987. Remember, did I say 87? I meant 1997. 1997. I'm off by 10 years. This is in 1997. Remember what I said in the last hour about Patricia Corona telling me almost the exact same thing in 1995. Mm-hmm. As a secular historian, she said almost the exact same thing that Dr. Peter Riddell, who's a Christian historian, said to me. He said, Jay, please continue to do what you're doing. But we in academia, we cannot do what you do. We don't have the freedoms you have. We are not permitted to say what you can say. Please get your doctorate. I did. I got my doctorate under Peter Riddell. In fact, he was the one who was my supervisor. And I got it in 2016, 2017, I got my doctorate. Why? Because I wanted to make sure that we are actually doing what was done to the Bible had to also been done to the Quran. So we have a freedom to be able to go places that even the academics don't have. And this is one reason why we're doing what we're doing and making sure we get this and making sure we get it out to the whole world.
Wonderful. I want to make a quick comment to Jonathan Terrell. That's not, brother, what we were talking about, but thank you for at least trying those names. But Jonathan, if I recall, you were one of the winners last time. I don't know if I ever received your information. So if I did, please resend it again because I don't recall that at all. And there was, Dion also was asking, how can Islam crumble by findings just in the last 50 years, if I understood the question correctly? I tell you how, courtesy of the internet. the internet, and Google. That's how can this religion crumble, because a lot of things are coming out right now. YouTube, Facebook, all of these platforms have been fascinating because what was hidden in secrets is out in the public right now, and many Muslims can, at the privacy of their home, in their own room, dare to go and read things like this, access things like this without the need to ask their imam, their friend, their father, their cousin. That's how this whole thing can crumble. And it's not big for God, by the way. He can cause it to crumble in 5 seconds, actually.
Let me give you an even better example that everybody knows. Remember what happened on June 8, 2020, when Muhammad Hijab did an innocent interview with Dr. Yasir Qadhi, who was in Houston. Muhammad Hijab was in London, and he put out his hands. He says, which Quran are you going to put here? Which one of these are you going to put? Is it going to be Hafs? Is it going to be Warsh? Is it going to be Khalun? Before he could even finish, Yasir Qadhi says, we don't talk about this in public. This is something that not, for the last 1,000 years, Muslim scholars have not been able to answer. And at the end of 28 minutes, when he was asked the second time, I'm still waiting, which are you going to write there? His response was, they're all the Quran. All 30 of them are the Quran. And I just started clapping. Now, I had no idea I was watching history while that was happening. Within 2 weeks after that interview, we put it up there. I had put it up there. I had within a few hours, I already had a 37-minute video that shut down everything and would ask a question about everything that was said on that 28 minutes. Hatun Tosh had a video. David Wood put a video. I don't know if Sam Shamoon put a video or not, but all of us put videos up there. Islamic Critique also put a video up there.
And I did something on it as well.
Did you do something on it as well? Yeah. And within 2 weeks, all the comments that were there at on both Hijab's site and on Yasir Qadhi had to be shut down. They had to be deleted. They had to shut down all comments.
They did it themselves, not YouTube. They did it themselves.
They did. Oh, no, this is you can only shut down yourself. You shut down your own comments. Why did they do that? If you had been watching and reading those comments, hundreds and hundreds, not just few, hundreds of Muslims were saying, I'm leaving Islam. I'm leaving Islam. And my blood is going to be on your shoulder, Dr. Yasir Qadhi. My blood is going to be on your shoulder, Hijab Muhammad, because of what you said in that interview. They had never heard this before. Now, why did Hijab even have that interview? Because we held up 26 Qurans at Speaker's Corner in 2016. Hatun Tosh had found them. And we said, you've got a problem here because there's not just one Quran, there's 26. Every one of them is different. No two are alike. That happened in 2016. One interview of 28 minutes did so much damage that by August, this is June, July, August, 2 months later, they had to delete that interview from both Hijab site and Yasir Qadhi site. You won't find it on their sites anymore. They had to delete it because so many hundreds of Muslims were leaving Islam. If one little interview could do that much damage using the internet, you've made our point. This is what's going to destroy Islam. It is something as simple as a little interview just asking 5 questions. Is this the same Quran that's in heaven? Is it the same Quran that Muhammad received? Is this the same Quran that Uthman canonized in 652? And if it is so, then why are these different names? Why 30 different names? Why 30 different? Why 93,000 differences between them? So how can you say there's one Quran? Which one is the one that's in heaven? Which one is the one that is in those original manuscripts? In fact, where are the original manuscripts? In fact, why is it the 5 that were created? Why is it we can't find even one of them today? So these are damaging questions. And now we're finding that it has nothing to do with Arabic. We're finding now that the Quran has nothing to do with Arabic. But hold on, that's for 2022.
That's what we say, woo, two.
That's my signature piece. Woo,
right. That's what we are going to be talking about. So folks, thank you so much for joining us. Remember, please consider to be a Patreon supporter through my channel, Sierra International, through my brother's channel, Founder Films. Consider to join my channel to basically be a member. I need to look at the camera to remind you, I'm looking at your comments. Consider to become a member by joining. Do you have the join option in your channel?
For what? Joining what?
To become members on your channel.
You mean subscribe?
No, there is subscribe and there is join also.
I have no option for that.
Yeah, so I have both options for people to subscribe or also join. Through join, you get some perks. You know, part of it is interacting with me. Also, we're going to be doing some Zoom calls and things like that with those who have joined us. We have few members already. I think we have about 30 to 35 members, if I recall the latest numbers. And we want you also to consider as well, giving through other means, if the Lord put in your heart, but also at the end of the day, please, please consider to pray for us. All right? Consider to pray for us. That's the most important thing that you can do for us. We're not here, by the way, to make you feel like guilty or make you feel like pressured that you have to join our support team. No, no, no. This has to come from your heart. God loves a cheerful giver, whether to give to the church, to give to ministries, to give to us. We want you to really feel the calling to do so, and we are so thankful for many of you who've done so, and many of you who are praying about. But pray for us. I mean, this is the greatest gift you can give to us because we are in the front line. We're fighting a tough battle, and we need all the support and the prayers that we can get. Thank you so much, everyone. This is Al Fadi, over and out. God bless.